Hey everybody, this is GGB. We actually had two upsets yesterday. I thought that was really interesting. I predicted one of them, so I have a point heading in to Tuesday, which is really good to sit heading into Tuesday. But if you did not know, Duke was actually upset off an amazing shot for Virginia, a 3-point shot that went in with 1.1 seconds left on the clock to give them the victory, 69-68. What a victory for Virginia. That only puts them a game back behind Miami and UNC, by the way. And the way UNC and Miami are both playing right now, this is very conceivable that Virginia can catch up to them. They have a 3-game winning streak going on. It's tied for the second longest winning streak in the entire ACC. The only one that's longer is Virginia Tech's. I mean, Virginia's playing some amazing basketball right now. You look at Duke. Duke, that was a rough blow because now Notre Dame is tied for you for first place. You still have the tiebreaker. Not only do you have a better record, but you also have the head-to-head over Notre Dame. But it's gotta hurt. You lost your 1-game lead that you could have had over Notre Dame. Now you're only half a game ahead of Wake Forest. There's a lot of things that could go wrong here down the stretch for you if you're Duke, and it really kind of hurts that you weren't able to get the victory over Virginia in a game that you likely should have won. Virginia controlled most of the game, but you had a great chance to win that basketball game late. They missed a shot that likely should have made it a Virginia loss, but they got a tie up, and then you left a guy wide open for a 3, so that really hurts. And then not to mention the Kansas-Texas game. The Kansas-Texas game was huge. Kansas obviously was in the lead for some of this game. It was really a back-and-forth game, but had a commanding 5-point lead with about 40 seconds left. And that's when Texas started to chip into that lead. They got a 3 to make it a 1-point game. Actually, I'm sorry, they had a 4-point lead. I'm pretty positive. They had a 4-point lead. They got a 3 to make it a 1-point game. Then Kansas drove down the lane, tried to do an alley-oop, and it hit the rim instead of gave it to the guy. And Texas ended up getting that, and they ended up scoring a 2-pointer from around the free throw line. They played some excellent defense, and they ended up coming away with a 3-point victory. Actually, yeah, 3-point victory. Big win for Texas, obviously only a game back in the loss column behind second place Baylor and Texas Tech. Only 2 games out of first place. This was a huge game for Texas because this was a make or break game for Texas. Texas, if you lose this game, you're very close to TCU overtaking you. There's a lot of bad things that could have come with a loss. So many great things can now happen with a couple more wins strung together for Texas. Anyways, those were the upsets we had yesterday. Obviously, Arizona State was unable to pull it out against Arizona. But we have a lot of games going on. Obviously, it's Tuesday, so there's always a lot of games going on, but we got about 9 ranked teams, so let's get into it. At 5:30, we have number 18 Marquette, which is at 16-7, traveling to number 24 UConn, which is at 15-6. UConn favored by 5.5 points on FS1. At 6 o'clock, we have number 1 Auburn, which is at 22-1, traveling to Arkansas, which is at 18-5. Auburn favored at 2.5 points on ESPN2. 6 o'clock, we have number 5 Kentucky, which is at 18-4, traveling to South Carolina, which is at 13-9. Kentucky favored by 11 points on ESPN. 6 o'clock, number 14, Wisconsin, which is at 18-4, traveling to number 17, Michigan State, which is at 17-5. Michigan State favored by 4.5 points on the Big Ten Network. 7:30, we have number 15, Villanova, which sits at 17-6, traveling to St. John's, which sits at 13-9. Villanova favored by 4.5 points on FS1. 8 o'clock, we have number 13, Illinois, which sits at 17-5, traveling to number 3, Purdue, which is at 20-3. Purdue favored by 6 points on ESPN. 9 o'clock, we have Pacific, which is at 7-15, traveling to number 21, USC, which is at 19-4. USC favored by 20 points on the Pac-12 Network. 10 o'clock, we have number 12, UCLA, which is at 16-4, traveling to Stanford, which is at 14-8. UCLA favored by 7.5 points on ESPN2. And 10 o'clock, we have number 22, St. Mary's, which is at 19-4, traveling to St. Clair, which is at 16-8. St. Mary's favored by 2.5 points on ESPN2. So let's start with the Big East real quick. I believe we have 2 Big East games, if I remember correctly. Yes, we have at 5:30 the Marquette UConn game, and then at 7:30 the Villanova St. John's game. So let's travel to the Big East real quick. Villanova, obviously playing a significant game with St. John's. Obviously, this game matters a lot to St. John's. They can hop up a lot in the standing. So if you're looking at it for Villanova, what does it matter for Villanova? If you move to 11-3, you've won 11 out of 14 games. That's a 78% win percentage. Providence has won 10 out of 11 games. Obviously, not as good. 78% is not going to reach that. That's a 90% win percentage, right? but at least keeps you there. You'll be 1 game ahead in the win column, 2 games behind in the loss column. So it'll keep you in the race if you're Villanova for that first place spot. Villanova with a loss here, it would just gash the whole, like Providence would basically have this conference locked up. Look at it, St. John's. St. John's with a win here. This is a huge game for St. John's. I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all. You better be playing your hearts out, St. John's, because you're looking at this. St. John's is right now 4th to last place. In other words, they're in 8th place in the Big East, right? With a win, not only will they pass Seton Hall, but they will also pass Creighton because they will both have 500 records, and St. John's will have won more games. They would be 6-6. Creighton would be 5-5. So if you're looking at it, you can go from 8th place in the Big East today to 6th place in the Big East today. You could hop Seton Hall and Creighton. So huge game for St. John's. If you lose this game, you fall to 5-7 out of the tie for 7th place, by the way. You're in a tie for 7th place right now with Seton Hall. If you lose this game, you fall to 5-7. And it's not good, right? Butler is not all that far behind you. Butler is actually, although they're on a 2-game losing streak now, they hadn't been playing horribly as of late. So I'm kind of interested to see how that kind of goes. But yeah, so big game for St. John's, obviously. And then you got Marquette and UConn. Marquette and UConn, obviously, in a big matchup. If UConn wins this game, they will be 7-4. 7-4 would be 7 out of 11 games, which is a 63% win percentage. Marquette with a loss would fall to 8-5, which means they've won 8 out of 12 games, which means it is a 66 win percentage. So Marquette would still be barely ahead of UConn with a loss. UConn with a loss, on the other hand, could fall to 6-5 and go into a tie with Xavier for 4th place. So let's break this down. If you're a Marquette fan, obviously going to be watching the Villanova St. John's game later tonight, and rooting a lot for St. John's, because if Marquette wins this game, they move to 9-4 in conference. And if Villanova loses, they're 10-4 in conference. Basically, Marquette's only 1 game back in the win column to be the number 2 seed in the Big East. So big game for Marquette to watch the Villanova one as well. If you're Xavier, kind of rooting for Marquette there, because Xavier, if UConn loses, you can enter a tie for 4th place. And then if you're Creighton or Seton Hall, probably rooting for Villanova because you don't want St. John's to leapfrog both of you. But anyways, that's what's going on in the Big East. Let's travel to the SEC for a little bit, since we have 2 pretty significant games going on there with Auburn and Kentucky both playing. Yep, that's all we got going on in there. But Auburn obviously sits in 1st place. I'll say it again. I've said it before and I'll say it again. With a win or a loss, they're still going to be in 1st place at the SEC. They have a 2-game lead on Kentucky. Now, Arkansas, on the other hand, this is a pretty significant game. Remember, if you win this game, if you're Arkansas and Kentucky loses their game against South Carolina, Arkansas is in a tie for 2nd place in the SEC. So pretty big game for the Hogs. With a loss, you fall to 7-4. Not horrible, but you drop out of the tie for 3rd. You will enter 4th place. So it's a good thing for Tennessee. It would end Arkansas's 8-game winning streak, the 2nd longest winning streak in the SEC, only behind Auburn's 19-game winning streak. So that's what's on the line for Arkansas. With a win and Kentucky loss, you can get into a tie for 2nd place. With a loss, you fall into 4th place. Then you look at Kentucky, South Carolina. I just explained to you what can happen if Kentucky loses this game. Kentucky wins this game, you can move to 9-2. And if Auburn loses it, they can fall to 10-1, and you're only 1 game back in the SEC. So that's what you're hoping for if you're Kentucky. South Carolina, on the other hand, does have a good amount to play for. Remember, South Carolina, as unlikely as it seems, with a 4-6 in conference record and only a 13-9 record overall, is tied for 7th place in the SEC with LSU, Texas A&M, Alabama, and Vanderbilt. So with a win here, they can move to 5-6 and get right behind Florida, unless Florida plays. Florida plays Wednesday, so you're going to be waiting on that. You're going to wait another day for South Carolina. But if you pull off the massive upset, you're going to be sitting at 5-6, and you will have 6th place all to yourself if you're South Carolina. With a loss, that would bump them out of the tie for 6th place, and that would drop them all the way to 10th place. 10th place, because Missouri wouldn't pass them unless Missouri had a game tomorrow. Actually, they do have a game tomorrow against Vanderbilt. So, interesting thing there. If South Carolina loses the game, they could fall to 4-7. If Vandy also loses, they can fall 4-7. There's a lot of things that can happen, I guess, with Vanderbilt and South Carolina. But basically, for South Carolina, if you lose this game, you're either going to be in a tie for 10th place or in 10th place by yourself. Yeah. Basically, if you lose this, if Missouri wins, then they're going to pass you. And if Vanderbilt loses, you're going to be in a tie for 10th place with Vanderbilt. So basically, that's what's going on if you're South Carolina. Obviously, going to be rooting for your own team tonight. Then you got the two big Big Ten games. You have all top four teams playing today in Illinois, Purdue, Michigan, Illinois, Purdue, Wisconsin, and Michigan State. Illinois is going to be playing Purdue, and Wisconsin is going to be playing Michigan State for a large. These games are going to go a long way to determining who wins the Big Ten. So if you're a Big Ten fan, you might want to tune in tonight. It's going to be a huge deal. It's going to determine a lot of who is going to win the Big Ten. Illinois with a loss can fall to 10-3, right? So that would mean Purdue can move to 10-3 on their own and be in a tie for first place in the SEC. Now, if you're a Purdue fan, you're also rooting for Michigan State tonight, because if you win against Illinois and Wisconsin also wins, then suddenly there is a three-way tie for first place instead of just a two-way tie with you and Illinois. Michigan State, obviously, with a win, can move to 9-3 in conference. And if Wisconsin and Purdue were to both lose and fall to 9-4, Michigan State could then enter second place again. Illinois, obviously, with a win, stays in first place. That's basically how things can shake up today. The best Michigan State can hope to do is get into second place on their own. They can't take first place just yet, but trust me, these games are going to go a long way in determining who wins that championship game, who wins the Big Ten regular season championship. And then let's talk about Pac-12 real quick, and then we'll go to the West Coast Conference. The Pac-12, you have UCLA playing Stanford. So UCLA is in second place, tied for second place in the Pac-12 with Oregon with an 8-3 record. With a win, they will obviously break the tie with Oregon, at least for now, unless Oregon also plays. Now, they don't play until Thursday, so we'll see them then. But if UCLA with a win moves to 9-3 in conference, and will break the tie, at least right for now, with Oregon. With a loss, you fall to 8-4. 8-4 would not be ideal, obviously, for this basketball team. That would be a 66% win percentage. Washington State has a 7-3, which is a 70% win percentage. That would be better. And let's see. Yeah, and USC's 9-4 would also be better. So you're looking at it, it would be bad. UCLA with a loss would obviously drop out of the tie. Oregon would move to second place. Washington State would move to third place, and USC would move to fourth place. If UCLA, you can either break the tie and get second place by yourself, or if you lose this game, you can fall all the way to fifth place in the Pac-12. So pretty huge game for the Bruins. Stanford sits at 7-5 in conference. With a win, can move to 8-5 in conference. Washington doesn't play until Thursday, so if you win this game, if you're Stanford, you move to 8-5. Obviously, you would have won 8 out of 13 basketball games, which means that's a 61% win percentage. If you're Washington, you will have won 7 out of 11. That's 63. What did I just say? I've lost my memory. Okay. So, yeah, unfortunately for Stanford, not able to pass Washington just yet, but you can come quite close with it. You'd only be 2 percentage points behind Washington. Now, with a loss here for Stanford, you could fall to 7-6. Colorado does not play until Saturday, but if you fall to 7-6, you're only about a game ahead, right? You sit at 7-6, Colorado sits at 6-7, so very close there. You don't want that if you're Stanford. They're not going to move regardless, though. And then you're looking at USC. USC's right now not in a tiebreaker with anyone. They don't really need to worry about that, but they are playing Pacific. That would only matter with tiebreakers, but there's no tiebreakers going on, so it doesn't really matter because no one's at the same winning percentage as them. Now you look at the West Coast Conference. St. Mary's, which is ranked for the first time this season, I believe, sits at 7-1 in conference, is playing Santa Clara, who sits at 6-3 in conference and tied for third place in the West Coast in the WCC. Santa Clara with a win can move to 7-3, break that tie at least right now with San Francisco. With a loss, they fall to 6-4. They would be in fourth place by themselves, and again break the tie with San Francisco, unless San Francisco plays today, which they do actually against Portland. So actually, they could end up still being tied. And likely, if Santa Clara does pull off the upset, they will still be tied because they're playing San Fran's playing Portland, and Portland's not exactly the best basketball team in the West Coast. With a loss for St. Mary's, they can fall to 7-2, and Santa Clara would be at 7-3, and likely so would San Francisco. Gonzaga would have a 2-point advantage in the WCC. But San Francisco and Santa Clara would only be about a game back in the loss column. St. Mary's with a win would be only one game back in the loss column from first place in the WCC. And again, they're playing Pacific. Pacific is in a tie with Portland right now. And conceivably, Pacific could lose against USC, which is the likely scenario, and still move up a ranking since Portland is likely to lose to San Francisco, and that's an in-conference game, so that's going to matter more. So, weirdly enough, if you're Pacific, you could actually lose this weekend and still move up in the rankings. But that's basically what's going on this week. That's how it's going to affect everything. Now, who do I think personally has the best chance of pulling off the upset? I'm probably going to go with a Big Ten team, if I'm going to be honest. I've been dating this back and forth whether I wanted to take Illinois or Michigan State. I'm going to go with Michigan State because I watched my Penn State Nittany Lions almost beat Wisconsin last weekend. And while I do love my Nittany Lions, that doesn't give me a huge vote of confidence in the Badgers. They probably will want to come out here and avenge their game against Penn State, but they didn't lose that one, which makes me feel like they're not going to want it as much as Michigan State's going to want it, considering they're coming off a pretty humiliating loss against Rutgers. I'm going to go with the Spartans here. Everybody's GGB saying adios amigos, go Spartans.